Hello, this is Kamau, Austin, publisher of Scoop Publications and your host for the Scoop on Black News weekly video program. Today I'm here with Brother Khefa Nosakhere, who is going to probably correct me, maybe on his name, but also he's going to talk to us about a very important topic, a very timely topic. As a matter of fact, I would call it almost a prophetic topic, in that he's going to talk about institutional racism through the lens of the great writer Richard Wright, and through some of the different characters in his books and how it relates to Black masculinity. So I want to welcome him to today's broadcast. Brother Khefa, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. Great to be here. And I'm looking forward to discussing such an important topic to our people.
Good, good. Well, the more I hear about you and the more you tell me about yourself, it's intriguing to me. I wanted to know more about what makes you who you are. What sort of shaped you growing up? Can you tell us a little bit about your background and some of the things that influenced and inspired you along the way?
Well, I could speak at length about that, but given time constraints, what influenced me was the love that I received from my grandmothers, my uncles, my aunts. Growing up, I grew up in an area of New Orleans called the 7th Ward, which is known as the Creole Triangle. And the 7th Ward is a historic place because you had free people of color when our people were in bondage. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother, Ruth Ventress Spates, is probably the single person who had the greatest impact on me. Even when I was a very small child, the respect that I had for her, she was like an institution. And then as I grew into puberty and adolescence, as a junior in high school, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I was introduced to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Right. And that helped me. It answered all of my questions, all of the questions that dealt with why am I being treated the way that I'm being treated? What's going on? Right. Well, when I read that book, imagine reading that book, I was 15 or 16 years old. When I was introduced to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then later I became aware of scholars like Dr. Yusuf Ben Yaqanan, and I had the pleasure of meeting him. I became aware of the great work of Dr. John Heinrich Clarke, Chancellor Williams, Gerald Massey, and of course, the mentor of one of my favorite scholars, his name is Dr. Neely Fuller, but his prized pupil is Dr. Francis Cress Welsing.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Yeah, those are some great mentors and people to know. I had the opportunity to hear many, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clarke and persons like that. I actually worked in the community with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, bringing him into the community. And actually a person that had a great deal of influence on my life, I actually had the opportunity to go to Senegal and meet Dr. Diop before he passed away. Yeah, I actually met him and talked to him.
Added his name. I have incredible, he was one of the most brilliant men ever, if you look at his academic record, but Civilization of Barbarism, the works that he left behind is an incredible legacy, not only to Black people, but really the whole world.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Dr. Diop and asking him, because you know he did that very important study of the Egyptians, and I asked him what did the Hebrews look like back in those days, and he was speaking in French through an interpreter, to another brother who was an interpreter, and Dr. Diop pointed at me. And the guy said, Dr. Diop just said they would have looked just like you. So yeah, you know, I'm sorry, I may be digressing a little bit, you know, but when I hear you speak, it sort of brings me down memory lane a little bit myself.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I guess this is sort of tied into the last question and maybe a little apparent, but maybe you can touch on it a little bit. So you were influenced by these great writers. So is that what inspired you to go into like literature and education and writing? Or was it something else?
Well, I would say that my love for literature was related to being encouraged from a very, very young age. I was encouraged to express myself. And when my uncles and my aunts, when we were all together, it was the best situation that any child could hope to be in. I had more love than I knew what to do with. And that environment, that nurturing, loving environment, was a strong foundation for me to express myself. And from that expression, I began to be introduced to Lorraine Hansberry, Langston Hughes, who is my favorite author. Their poetry, their work from a very young age. When I took honors English at Francis W. Gregory Junior High School. So I would say that my greatest motivating factor would have been the love of literature given to me, I would say, by the poetry that I heard as early as elementary school. And I'd ask myself, wow, who wrote that? What caused them to write that? When I heard the work of Langston Hughes, I asked myself these questions as early as elementary school, if you can believe that. I think that his work has and it will stand the test of time. I've known rivers. I've known ancient dusty rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I mean, you're not going to forget that. Our people never forget that. I looked upon the Euphrates when dawns were young. I saw the Nile and built my hut near the Congo. I mean, that's come on, man. That's one for the ages. That's his story.
Beautiful, yeah.
And he, in a poem, I looked upon the Nile and built the pyramids above it. Okay? So as early as the 19th century, Langston Hughes reclaimed our great intellectual gifts that have been stolen, right? And so when I heard that, I just thought to myself, man, that's beautiful. I would love to be able to write like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, also, I think, and probably a lot of people, I've read a lot of people who feel that Black masculinity is under attack. You know, I would say that it's always been under attack, but it just seems like recently with what happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others, you know, it's just becoming so evident that Black masculinity is under attack. So how does that relate to Richard Wright and, you know, and to the perspective that you have talking about institutional racism and Black masculinity? Because it seems like you, before this even happened, this was something that had drawn your attention, and you know, you wanted to write about and express.
So if you think about the history of the United States, Black masculinity has always been under attack because we were kidnapped and brought here against our will. We came here as Africans, but we were made into chattel. And so whenever you want to dehumanize a people, you have to break up their family units. You have to strip them from their power. That power is their memory and their culture and their beliefs. And so the attack on Black masculinity is hundreds of years old, unfortunately. And what you see today with the death of George Floyd, a few weeks ago, I was talking to a very dear friend, and I reminded her. I said, why didn't Tamir Rice get this outpouring? He was 12 years old. Why didn't Sandra Bland get this? She was a woman. Mm-hmm. And of course, the answer to that is it was a buildup. What we saw, or what we're seeing with George Floyd, is not really about George Floyd. It's about the buildup. It's about Tamir Rice and Michael Brown and Philando Castile and Trayvon Martin and all the other unfortunate brothers and sisters who lost their lives needlessly. Okay, and so what I am looking forward to from what you see going on today is an attempt to have rough, difficult discussions with white people, and primarily those in power and those who are at the cusp of power, so that this country can move forward in a way that it could have moved forward in 1865 if we were granted land and if we were granted the things that should have been granted in 1865.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so can you sort of tie into Richard Wright and his perspectives on Black masculinity in his writing and how that ties into what's happening today?
Yes, sir. So the most relevant writing that Richard Wright left behind in regards to Black masculinity is an essay called The Ethics of Living Jim Crow. And in The Ethics of Living Jim Crow, he talked about how dangerous it was on any given day if you said the wrong thing to an uneducated white man far beneath your station. You could have been an educated Black man, a professional, but if you said the wrong thing to a white man on any given day, it could cost you your life. Okay, so there's The Ethics of Living Jim Crow. There's Native Son, which is what he is primarily remembered for, although that's unfair because of the overall contribution. But The Ethics of Living Jim Crow speaks specifically about the difficulties of being a Black man in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. He was speaking primarily of his youth in the 40s, primarily in the 40s. Richard Wright himself is from he was born on Rucker Plantation in Mississippi, the state where we caught the most hell. He only lived to be 53, but his life was his literary rise was meteoric, and I'm drifting off a little bit here, but the primary writing where he discussed Black masculinity and even institutional racism, in my humble opinion, is The Ethics of Living Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I see. So, can you tell us a little bit about maybe how his writings and maybe there is some some correlations to your life that you feel, challenges that you've had. You know, I can remember I was a activist, and we used to do a lot of police brutality types of cases, you know. We had a community organization, that's what we did. Now I'm talking, we going back, oh my goodness, we're going back probably 30 years.
Okay.
And I remember some young people arguing outside. And then I heard a police car come to the scene. And then by that time we had come downstairs. And what had happened was there was a white kid and a black kid. And the white kid and the black kid were friends. And then there was another white kid who had gotten, in other words, the two white kids had gotten into an argument and to a little scuffle. The police come on the scene. They don't find out about the two white kids scuffling. The first thing they do is attack and beat up the black kid.
Right.
Coming to the scene and thinking automatically the black kid started trouble. You know, black kid.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I could go on and on. I know in my lifetime, I used to live in an integrated neighborhood, and I just walked down the street. I was coming from a business conference one day, and the police just stopped me. And I said, "What'd you stop me for?" And they said, "Well, we've never seen a black man in a double-breasted suit and a briefcase walking down the street at this time at night." It was about 12 o'clock. So, I'm sure there's a lot of stories like this that a lot of black men go through. I walked through one neighborhood one day, and there was a guy following me with a big searchlight, not big, just he had the searchlight on me, like following me through his neighborhood until I walked out of his neighborhood, because I do a lot of walking and stuff. But, there's a lot that we as black men go through. And I was wondering, in your personal experience, what some of the things that may have happened to you that made you sensitive and want to write more about this?
When I was, the summer that I was going to the 7th grade, I remember looking at a picture of a picture that you and I were taught was Jesus. And I said to myself, let's see, they were in the burning hot desert, and he looks like that. And then I voiced that. At first it was the thought, and when I voiced it, it came to the physical realm. And I remember going to vacation Bible school in Violet, Louisiana, and the Sunday school teacher's name, I'm not making this up, her name was Miss Poindexter. And she had
no way.
The glasses. This is an older black woman. And I said, Miss Poindexter, if the people in the Bible were alive today, what would they look like? And she looked at me like I had horns and a pitchfork. Right? And obviously, I didn't get an answer that day, but I think back to that day a lot because that is the day that I started on my cultural intellectual journey. So the picture, and I'm going to tie into my own experiences, the picture that you and I were told is Jesus is actually, his name is Cesar Borgia, and he is the son of, it was a pope, I forget his name, but every religious form that we see has a story behind it, a story that demystifies religion. Like the Last Supper. Believe it or not, those men that modeled for the Last Supper were Italian criminals. They got them from a prison. This is true. I'm not making this up. Now, if I were to tell you about my interactions with the police, I noticed that every time I interacted with white police, let me say this to you. I am convinced, I was always taught to deal with them a certain way. I was always taught that it's important for me to stay calm, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have been stopped so many times, that's not the issue. I told a friend of mine recently that the only reason why they didn't kill me is because when they heard me speak, they knew that they would have to deal with some people in some situations that they wouldn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Right.
I believe that they know who to target
Mm.
by the way they know who to target, and this is something that I actually believe very strongly. Now, you'll have some people to say, I've heard it said, it doesn't matter how you dress, it doesn't matter how you sound. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because my life and my experiences says otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in junior high school, I noticed when they would stop other brothers. And the commonality that I saw is how those brothers were dressed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I said to myself, I'm not going to give them that reason to stop me. And
Right.
when I was, the way that I dealt with them kept the situation from escalating. And again, I don't want to discount anything that has happened with anyone else. I can only speak to my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I can always remember when I was stopped by them, I looked them in the eye, I answered their questions. I would use their names. One thing that I guess a lot of people don't know is that on their uniform, there's a lot of information on that uniform, such as their district, their rank. All of these things are important. So my experiences with the police have been somewhat different than the typical brothers, the typical stories, because it was always foremost in my mind that I had to control the situation.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of that, it resonates with me because, I come from a background, well, no other way to coin it, but I come from like a self-defense background, myself. And there's just certain ways you deal with people to try to de-escalate a situation
Right.
if you can.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
If you
saying?
can. Yes, sir.
So that's the way I usually deal with the police. So I can relate. I can relate to it. I think I know where you're coming from, and you want to be in control of the situation and not just responding to their negativity, which can escalate. Sure, sure. Well, can you? What I want to do real quick with this technology that we have is I want to share the screen and take a look at your book, and because I want to let people know that there's a way that you can find out more about Khefas's books, and you can go to the site, put his name in the search engine, and you can find out where you can pick up his book. All right.
You have to allow me to share the screen, brother. It says disabled. If you can turn that.
Well, I'm going to share the screen first. Then you can. Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay. So this is the Black News Scoop, and as I said, you can just put in Khefa in our search engine, and it'll bring up all of his articles that we have on the Black News Scoop. And this is one exclusive interview that I did with him. You can find out more about his book here. And this is the cover. And you know, like I said, we're sort of a gateway that you can find out more about his books. Can you give us maybe a couple of other things that a person could pick up from your book reading it?
Well, how about if I read you a little bit from the introduction? How about that?
Hey, that's a good idea. I'm with that.
When I thought that it would be relevant and pertinent to include my favorite poem. My favorite poem is, the title is Tired by Fenton Johnson. It was written in 1922. And you can understand what Black folk was going through in 1922. I believe that this poem, out of every poem that I've read, I believe it best describes our pain and our situation here in America. I'll share it right now. This is Tired, and I put it in the introduction.
Right.
This is Tired by Fenton Johnson. I am tired of work. I am tired of building up somebody else's civilization. Let us take a rest, Miss Lizzie Jane. I will go down to the Last Chance Saloon, drink a gallon or two of gin, shoot a game or two of dice, and sleep the rest of the night on one of Mike's barrels. You will let the old shanty go to rot, the white people's clothes turn to dust, and the Calvary Baptist Church sink to the bottomless pit. You will spend your days forgetting you married me, and your nights hunting the warm gin Mike serves the ladies in the rear of the Last Chance Saloon. Throw the children into the river. Civilization has given us too many. It is better to die than it is to grow up and find out that you are colored. Pluck the stars out of the heavens. The stars mark our destiny. The stars mark my destiny. I am tired of civilization.
Wow.
Literary scholar Keith Kinnaman said that Fenton Johnson sat out the Harlem Renaissance, but his work, Tired, probably best describes the depths of despair millions of African Americans felt historically, as well as today. It is a poem that Richard Wright could painfully and immediately relate to. In 1908, that's when he was born, including the decades that followed, life was extraordinarily difficult for African Americans. Due to the structure of the nuclear family unit, this is especially true for the main target of institutional racism, African American males. Based on the racist principles this nation was founded upon, African American males have a shorter life expectancy, an unemployment rate almost 3 times higher than everyone else, and represents an inordinate amount of the prison population, 47%, even though we are only 13% of the total population. In June of 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a vital clause of the 1964 Civil Rights Voting Act, stating in effect that racism in 2013 was not the issue it was in 1965. Racism in 2019 is worse than it was in 1965 because rights so many people died for are being taken back, and the oppressed have been lulled to sleep by apathy and a false sense of security.
Right. Wow. Very nice, very nice. Beautiful, beautiful words. In the sense of making your point, making a powerful point, and very symbolic and metaphorical language.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you said you wanted to share your screen. Was there something that you wanted to share with us?
Well, this is, I'm reading from the actual book itself.
Right.
And of course, I would encourage everyone to go out and get a copy. Given it would also be a great gift. But you said something earlier that the subject is almost prophetic, given that I'm talking about Black masculinity. I do discuss the prison industrial complex, the pipeline to prison. It also contains a copy of How Bigger Was Born, where Richard Wright talks about the background for writing Native Son. I also believe I included a copy of The Ethics of Living Jim Crow. Yes, on 162, there is it's included. The Ethics of Living Jim Crow. So this book is meant to be a resource for serious scholars. I put a lot into it. I had a lot of trouble getting the book together in terms of getting it just formatted. And I said to myself, growing up down south, the elders have a lot of sayings, and I remember them saying, it ain't nothing but the devil. When you try to get done, right?
Yeah.
Saying nothing but the devil. I couldn't. There was a time when I couldn't get it to line up. And so I finally did. Of course, had trouble with the ISBN. I mean, they kept sending the wrong ISBN. But anyway, finally got done, and it's something that I put my heart and soul into. There's even a backstory to this. If you read my bio, you'll notice that I mentioned my junior high school by name. I mentioned my high school. I mentioned my undergraduate institution, but I don't mention my graduate institution because of the racist white male professors there, and I never will. And I hope I get even bigger. I hope they approach me one day to ask me to do something. I'm going to tell them where they can go. Had a terrible, terrible experience with my graduate program. Thanks to white male professors. Would you believe me if I told you that several white male professors at my graduate institution with PhDs in English in America, and they said they'd never heard of Richard Wright? That's an insult. And in other words,
kidding me?
No, I am not. I'm not.
Wow, I'm really stunned. That's a bit incredulous. Wow, that's just
if you look
unreal.
At my Bible, you'll notice I mentioned my junior high by name, my high school, and my undergraduate institution. You will never see my graduate institution connected with me. Never.
I see. Well, let me just ask you in closing, just to take a little bit of a different angle on you. Can you tell us like some of the things you like to do for fun and relax and enjoy life, other than the serious literary scholar? What are some of the things you like to do?
Well, I am a graduate of the University of Southern California, and we are known. USC has a tremendous academic and athletic tradition. We are considered a football school, so I follow my Trojans. I bleed cardinal and gold, and I'm a native of New Orleans, and I'm a charter member of the Who Dat Nation. I'm an expert on the Marvel Universe. Earlier, you asked me about what was some of the things that encouraged me to write. When I was a young man, when I was very young, a young child, I read Thor comic books. Mm-hmm. So what made Thor different was that he didn't get his powers in a lab accident. Thor is the god of thunder. He was actually worshipped on Earth. Odin and Thor and Heimdall were actually worshipped here on Earth. Mm-hmm. And he spoke differently. He was the god of thunder. He was a god. And so that introduced me to mythology. I'm a huge lover of the Marvel Universe, of the Star Wars universe. It's like a getaway. So science fiction is a getaway, I guess, for many people. Right. But I would say that those would be my, I love to, I've taken up bonsai trees recently. So I do try to give myself some creative outlets, and I'm actually working on a screenplay as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was lagging for many years in reading until I started reading Marvel comic books. And believe it or not, after reading Marvel comic books, my reading level was always at least 2 grades ahead. So I went from not being a good reader to an excellent reader. And it was like you said, you know, I used to read about the different things like the gamma rays and the beta rays change this hero and that hero. And I used to go look it up and I said, oh, in science it's really this. Or like you said with Thor, you know, I said Thor and I read about him being the god of thunder, and that opened me up to reading about mythology and histories and cultures and different things like that. But and also, you know, my daughter and I are working on some unique perspectives on superheroes also in our media company. So that's we have a lot of parallels, brother.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
well, I'm gonna, you know, we're gonna sign off, and you know, is there anything you'd like to say in ending to our audience?
Well, for those of you in New York City, I'm open to, if you bring me up there, I'm open to giving a lecture. I'd love to visit the Schomburg. Uh, I have a few dear classmates that are still in New York City. I'd love to visit. And if someone wants to bring me up, love to come up and spend some time and lecture.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We gotta look into that. We gotta, you know, we have some issues with COVID up here now,
Right.
but as it eases, we gotta look into that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you and getting to learn more about your book and your background and things like that. I think it's been an excellent session, very inspiring. And to you know, our viewing audience, thanks for you know, coming on and listening to this program. And again, this is Kamau Austin, the publisher of Scoop Publications and your host for the Scoop on Black News video program. And we will see you soon.
Thank you so